I'm a medical oncologist. I work here. I'm interested in ocular melanoma. So my talk will be rather fast because we're fortunate to have Famida Gwadri-Sridhar here, who has expertise in registry, international registries, and so I'm going to share my time with Famida, who will tell us about the registry. Now, why are registries important? Now, there are a lot of gaps in the ocular melanoma field, some of which are never going to be filled by randomized phase 3 clinical trials. So these are some of the things which we don't know: risk factors, risk stratification, surveillance strategies. And the use of real-world data to fill in some of these gaps may be helpful in terms of helping us understand what the answers are in terms of dealing with rare cancers. And increasingly, the use of real-world data has been accepted by regulatory agencies as adjunctive evidence for drug approval. So we can certainly look at some of these things in terms of the application of extracting real-world data from the real world in terms of environmental factors, risk factors, and I was talking with Bertil about that today. But patient-based registries and patient-reported outcome registries are key. So we were fortunate enough to be part of an international grant with the Americans, Liverpool, headed by Rich Carvajal and Joe Sacco, respectively, and myself, well, initially it was a grant, then it turned into a academic pharmaceutical collaboration, and now we have contracted with Pulse InfoFrame out of the University of Waterloo that Famida heads up to run the International Ocular Melanoma Registry. And so this was the overall objective of the grant as it was written, to build a patient registry of prospectively collected real-world information. And we will involve certainly all those stakeholders in this, including a patient-based registry, patient-reported outcome registry module, which will be attached. So these are all the keys to drug approval, but what we're trying to do is, as well as assist with drug approval, also demonstrate value for payers. I won't read through this slide because I've got half the time I intended to speak, but the real-world outcomes that we hope to gain from these will hopefully be the nidus of a national collaborative effort in this space in Australia and also around the world. And this is potentially how we anticipated working. As it stands, there's an independent sponsor, which is probably Columbia. They've contracted to Pulse, and Pulse is going to coordinate through Melanoma Skin Cancer Trials Limited, the Australian centres, and whether there's 3 or 6 centres will depend on the amount of funding. The grant was originally written with 3, which was initially intended to be Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, but and how that granularity comes out will depend on the money and the enthusiasm of investigators in each city as to how we make that work, and that will be subject to further discussions when we have finalised all the legal pieces, which are now well and truly in progress. So what are the key requirements for success for us to join this international effort? Obviously a collaboration between ophthalmologists, medical oncologists and patients. Industry participation is critical, and Famida's worked very hard with also getting industry involved, as well as making sure that the outputs of the registry meet industry standards that would assist them with their drug approvals in terms of quality and security, and that we have multi-centre and international participation, and there's appropriate governance around this. So there are some incentives for us to participate. I'm optimistic that we will be able to contribute Australian data to this registry, certainly as it's my intention to download the 983 patients from the ocular melanoma metastatic meta-analysis that was referred to onto this database to make it available for investigators when, again, the legal agreements are completed, but those 983 patients are also a global effort under a different platform, but lends itself to being put into this as a open source resource available for ocular oncology. And so there'll be significant oversight, and as this gets crystallised, anyone in this room really could contribute to any of these oversight committees, but we haven't started on any of that yet, but it's certainly looking for expressions of interest as things come together. So these are some of the questions that people ask. We're going to harmonise data collection. We've got a data dictionary. That data dictionary is mapped to appropriate official data terms. You can't just make up a data field you want, like does the patient have red hair? It has to be appropriately mapped to, and for me as an expert in that field, there are core and optional fields. You can certainly partition out Australian data for analysis, partition out your own centre data if you want to do it, but still participate in the international overall collaboration. So that we have initial IRB approval at Columbia, and a number of centres in Australia is coming on is planned in the next 12 months. And these are the accrual estimates that we anticipate taking patients from primary diagnosis onwards. And we have a protocol which is currently with Libby and the team at Mask, which is being worked on for the Australian centres, and we are going to partner eventually with a patient-based reported outcomes registry. The patients will be able to put their own data in as they go on, which can also look at issues with regards to some of the symptoms, quality of life, etc., as well as epidemiology of the nature of ocular melanoma. And there have been some very famous clusters of ocular melanoma in the States that have made the news recently that maybe we can get some insights into. So we've done this before. Famita and I have worked on the Canadian melanoma registry, and that's worked very well, mind you, cutaneous melanoma. We've had 5 sponsors, a number of papers have come out of this, 44 physicians. So there is a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes for melanoma, as well as for rare cancers, as well as for rare diseases, again, and Famita's the expert in that. So I will hand over to, and we've got some governance if anyone's interested. I'm going to hand over to Famita now to take over to tell you a bit more of the granularity regarding the IT platform and some of the application of a international registry. Thank you, Famita.